call to order the regular board meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. It's October 3rd, 2024, 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bendy?
Here.
Commissioner Bowe?
Here.
Commissioner Halting? Oh, sorry. Commissioner Leduc?
Present.
Commissioner Metza?
Here.
Commissioner Tunnel?
Here.
Commissioner Grau?
Here. Okay, does anyone have anything to add, amend, or delete from the current agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will move to approval of the minutes. I move to approve the minutes from September 19th, 2024, regular board meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will move on to our guest, School District 64 referendum presentation by Dr. Collins. Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity and chance to speak about the referendum that's currently going on right now in District 64. A lot of the things going on in our school district are directly in line with all the aims that the Park District tries to do at the same time for all of the youth and people in our community. So in a lot of ways, I see this as benefiting the Park District, and I'll definitely try to tie in those moments as I go through this. This is a very abbreviated presentation. Generally, I talk for about 30 minutes with usually a much longer Q&A. But because I know what board meetings are like, I'm just going to give you the general overview and happy to answer any questions at the end. Everything that we're trying to do for our referendum is to make sure that we have the best spaces possible for all of our kids. We've got wonderful families that reside in our school district in Park Ridge and Niles, and we want to ensure that people continue to be very proud of the school system, and our students have those opportunities that when I was principal at Maine South, I had a front row seat to see what it was like when you had a world-class K-8 education and then students would come into high school, and I would tell all of our freshman parents on that freshman parent night, especially for those parents that they're the first high school kid, you know, they're pretty nervous walking in. And I would tell them, I said, if you just follow what the teachers set out for you and engage with the school and community, your kids are going to be literally able to do anything. They can go to any school they want to. They can start a business straight out of high school. We had kids doing it all. This is one of the rare communities where students have that opportunity. And so we're just trying to make sure that that continues. Our buildings are old, and they are not in great shape. Couple of situations, they're in what I would consider terrible condition. 3 of them are 97 years old, and they look every bit of it. 3 of our schools were built in the 50s. The last time there was a building bond referendum, which is what this referendum was in 1997, and that's where you got Emerson, which opened in 1998. And then the last time there was a referendum in general, that was a tax rate referendum. That was in 2007. The district was under some really serious and significant dire straits financially. Tax rate had been low for a long time, and the expenses had just risen beyond what we were able to work and make do. And so that referendum was passed, and then it alleviated a lot of the situations going on financially, but there was a considerable amount of deferred maintenance leading up to that point, because as a school district, you do everything you possibly can to put all of your money as close as possible to the students. And sometimes roofs, gutters, foundations, HVAC systems, those other things, you try to keep those going on as well past their end of life as far as possible. In 2022, Jefferson was renovated, and that's when full-day kindergarten began. And if I wasn't here talking about the building referendum, I would be talking about a referendum for full-day kindergarten, because that's mandated in Illinois by 2027. This is the history of those capital expenses over the course of the last 25 years. You can see the bar on your right that's much higher is because of the full-day kindergarten capital infusion that our board decided to do, which actually saved us money in the long run. But like I mentioned earlier, if you look all the way over to your left, you can see those expenses were well below what they needed to be to maintain the buildings. And if anybody understands maintaining buildings, it's this board. because you have to maintain a lot of square footage, a lot of outdoor and a lot of indoor spaces too. They're not cheap, and they only become more expensive when you actually don't put the money forth on the front end. So there's 4 areas of the referendum. The 2 largest are health, safety, and security, and mechanical and infrastructure. Obviously, school safety right now is probably one of the most important things that we talk about and do. It's certainly the number one thing that when I'm in conferences with my colleagues, it's discussed. Classroom improvements and building additions actually make up a smaller portion of this, but in a lot of cases, and I was talking about this with a group this morning, the schools that were built 97 years ago, 3 of the departments in the schools never existed. Special ed as a construct didn't even exist in the city. So technology, a lot of our special programs and elective programs, none of that was what schools were asked to do. There wasn't even a nurse's office until the 60s and 70s. Our schools now are mental health facilities. They are hospitals for students who don't have any health care. We are doing a lot of things from a physical and wellness perspective that schools were never asked to do in the initial part. And we've got students who speak multiple languages and they don't speak English at home that are also learning how to speak English as they come into our country, which is a growing population here. So we have to do everything we possibly can to provide those spaces for students. And right now, unfortunately, in 2 of our schools, at Field and at Franklin, we have students who are receiving multilingual and special ed services and intervention services that have to go out in the hallway. And we also have social workers and school psychologists that are doubled and tripled up in their offices. And so there's no way that they can have confidential conversations with students. So we're trying to rectify that by making sure that where we put walls and some small additions can do right by those students. So you can see what the allocation of funds looks like for the referendum, which is at $89 million currently. That's the max of what it could be, and I'll show you the financial impact in just a moment. And then in terms of our schools, we've got plumbing systems that as we speak are flushing, even though there's nobody in the schools. They flush 24/7, 365 days a year. Don't ask, I don't know why, but that's just how they were designed for a long time. So that's our estimate for the amount of water that we waste every year. And a lot of taxpayers don't necessarily know that the school still has to pay those water bills, just like a homeowner or someone works in an apartment, owns an apartment would be. You can see what the mechanical piece is, and I've actually got a slide just in a moment to show you from the 97-year-old Roosevelt Elementary School, what we've been doing there recently. And then our electrical costs are significant. We have a humongous amount of fluorescent bulbs all across our schools. And some of these fluorescent bulbs light things like gymnasiums. So these are not small light fixtures. They draw a lot of power. They're extremely inefficient. They're actually outlawed in 7 states, but we have them. So we're trying to replace things like that, which we would realize in immediate savings. So this is just a couple of examples, and unfortunately, Roosevelt's had a tough go so far. But like I said, it's 97 years old and hasn't been updated in a long time. On August 27th, it was one of those really, really hot days. So 2/3 of the cooling system at Roosevelt failed, and you can see that picture of basically a sprinkler that you would see in anyone's yard. We had to hose it up to the roof and then basically try to cool down the coils. So I'm sure Mr. Wolf is looking at this, probably thinking, you got to be kidding me. But no, that's the way it is in our schools, unfortunately. We almost had to shut the school day down. So we were literally walking around taking indoor temperatures as the temperature was rising. We had a threshold, didn't quite get there, but it was in the low 80s. That's not good for kindergartners. Same thing at Roosevelt. We had a corroded pipe. That's part of the referendum that we were going to replace anyway. It burst. The 3rd grade classrooms flooded. We had to put those kids in different areas of the school. Our maintenance team and Mr. Mendoza did an unbelievable job of getting those classrooms online within a day. But in both of these cases, we also had significant emergency repairs that cost a lot of money, in the tens of thousands of dollars, unfortunately. All of that is part of the referendum too. So I just want to highlight a couple of situations when people say, there's nothing wrong with the schools. I'm saying, no, that's not true. This is what the rendering of the new Lincoln cafeteria. This is the most extensive addition. Of the 3 additions, this one's the largest. Currently at Lincoln Middle School, do we have any Lincoln grads in the audience? Okay, usually speaking to a few Lincoln grads. Okay, there you go. Okay, there we go. Okay, go Lions. So down in the cafeteria, which is in the basement, you would never be able to build that room like it's constructed now with the building codes and the safety requirements that we have. There's no possible way because there are 4 exits. One goes to a single person stairwell. And remember, this is about 300 students at one time down there with close to 20 to 30 adults. 2 of them go to slightly larger stairwells, but usually you can only get 2 people up those, and then one goes to another room. So there's no direct access out. If something were to happen and we needed to clear that space or students would need to get out quickly, it's literally impossible. There's one elevator that goes down there. It's already broken 3 times this school year. It's not a good situation. Any of our students in wheelchairs or students who are not as physically able, it's really challenging for them just to get to lunch. So what we would propose is on the northwest corner of the school. So when you're driving by Lincoln, it's where there's a blacktop where our students usually have recess. It's just on the other side of that. The school's actually built for an addition there. They thought there was going to be addition back in the 50s, but they didn't do it. So this is what the rendition would look like. The reason I bring it up here is because I could also see it doubling as a community space or something that a park district program would use in the summer, in the evening. We would design it as a performance space because right now we don't have a performance space at Lincoln. So as a former band director and music person, it's a big issue with me. But right now, if you need to do a performance, typically what ends up happening is all the Lincoln students have to go over to Emerson. So we would design it like that, but I would also design it with the thought that this could be a really great community gathering space as well. And it would be, and this is kind of insider information for all of you, but it would be lockable so that you could use that space at night and lock it off from the rest of the building, which is always going to be good for any kind of community usage. And just in terms of 2 really quick safety features, the first one is the locks. My oldest child is a 1st grader, and just really breaks my heart that she came home from school a couple weeks ago and she's like, "Daddy, we did a lockdown drill today. You know, locks lights out of sight." I'm like, "Oh, okay, let's do your multiplication tables." But that's the world we live in right now. She gets to memorize that. So we need to design a door in the worst case situation you could ever imagine in our community, because unfortunately that's what we have to do. That a 1st grader or a kindergartner could literally turn over to it and lock it, no problem, okay? Lock it in from the inside with a reinforced frame. Nobody ever trying to get into a building or trying to do anything violent has ever gotten on the other side of a locked door with a reinforced frame. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of data in this country to back that up. So whenever I go to safety conferences, that's the first thing that usually gets discussed when we're talking in particular about elementary students. High school and middle school students are going to be a little bit more mobile, but it works the same for them as well. On the right, you can see the yellow, and this is in Springman Middle School in Glenview, which was just remodeled, which is actually newer than Lincoln Middle School. I was talking to the superintendent. He's like, "Man, our school is like 75 years old." I was like, "Oh, I got you beat." So you can see the yellow hallway. That would be for like a first responder. So all of their hallways are color-coded. If a student's going into shock, or we've got a staff member who's having a heart attack, or anything where you would need medical assistance immediately, the way schools are being designed now is everything's either color-coded or some kind of theme, so that the second you turn down a hallway and you're a first responder, you don't need to really understand how the building's laid out. You just need to know orange hallway 107. That's it. And then what you don't see in this picture is what we would have, and this is still actually under construction, you just can't tell, is you would see room signs. So the second you turn a hallway like that, you'd be able to see all the rooms from standing right there, as opposed to waiting until you're in front of them. So little things like that. Now in elementary schools, if they were going to have carpet, I imagine my daughter, and I would say something like, and this is how they design them, they would say, if you need to evacuate and you hear all of a sudden the principal coming over the loudspeaker, you just follow the fish. Because the fish, the way they design the building and the carpet, they lead everybody out of the school. So small design features like that can go a long way. And a lot of the companies that we're engaging, this is what they do now. This is what we're expecting. And we would do that for all of our buildings. This is what the financial impact looks like. So this is at the level that you're taxed at, not at what you're selling your house at, because those are 2 different levels. This is for people on a homeowner's exemption. So if you're on a senior exemption or a senior freeze doesn't impact your taxes at all. Senior exemption, it would be lower. And then we are actually at a high point for senior freezes and exemptions in Park Ridge right now, which is kind of interesting. So quite a few of people on that level. You can see what the monthly impact would be. Our tax calculator, you can go on the website, plug in whatever your tax rate is for your individual home, and then it'll kick out exactly what it would be. And that's obviously the high end. we would hope that it'll be lower. So every time interest rates drop, obviously that's good for us because right now even the interest rate that we're seeing is lower than what we had estimated prior. So we'll keep eyeballing that. And then finally, a lot of the questions I get are, how are you going to make sure this doesn't happen again? We don't want to be at a referendum 20 years from now. Currently, we put $2 million, which is about 2% of our budget, towards capital expenses. We did the math. If we had a past referendum, replaced everything we were going to replace, and then actually put it on some type of schedule, that's just a small screenshot of a huge spreadsheet that you can see on our website. So we have a 30-year long-term capital facility maintenance plan. It's got all of our debt when it rolls off, when the bonds are callable. It's got a percentage of adjustment across the board that we would estimate for inflation. And then it's got when all of these systems come into play where we would need to be replacing things like HVAC, ceiling tiles, lighting systems, boilers, chillers, all the things that nobody sees but actually cost the most amount of money when you're in a room. Our estimate is $4 million a year gets us to the point where we would never have to be in this situation ever again for buildings. So no matter what, we have to make some hard decisions to adjust those numbers so that we can make that happen. But we're committed to doing that for our community because I think ultimately that's the right thing to do. And then obviously we have ongoing financial forecasting all the time, just like you do, to ensure that we have all the money that we need and we have all the money that we're going to want going forward for our students. That's the fastest I can do this presentation, so I just want to say thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Who did your capital asset, who?
Mr.
Yeah.
Mendoza and Dr. Parisi in help with a lot of our vendors. So they would work with our HVAC vendor and they map out the whole system for them. It's a huge document, but we're really proud of it. So it took about 2 months. Yeah. It
Really?
was good.
Yeah. Ours is a little holy, from what I've heard.
Terry and I and staff, we've been looking at it, working through it. It's a lot of information and data, not just building, but also Parkside's playground. So we have a lot to do. But the tool that Dr. Collins has put together, it will be really great for the Park District.
Oh, good. That's great.
And if this does pass, what's the time estimate on when construction would be completed?
2 years. So construction would probably start in some cases right after spring break, in most cases right after the last day of school. And then our estimate is 2 years of construction.
And how impactful to our programs?
We would certainly, and we've talked a little bit about this, we would certainly have to sit down and kind of map things out. One of the things that we would look to do is to move summer school over to Maine South. I know a few people over there, so I can think we could make that work. I think the biggest thing is going to be communication and long-term planning, and just trying to be creative as possible. And in most cases, I don't think it'll be too much. It just really depends. For elementary schools in the summer in particular, those entire campuses would go offline. So we would have to just kind of figure out where certain things could go. We haven't had a ton of conversations yet about what all of the sequencing would look like at the minute detail for construction. So because those are so large and take so much time, we would wait till after and to know whether or not we have a past referendum. But we would certainly want to sit down immediately, involve you all in the planning, and do whatever we possibly can so the impact would be as minimal as possible.
Good answer.
I had a question about, one of the categories is HVAC and air quality. Thank you, Terry. So is that just like better HVAC and better filtration? Are you thinking about putting indoor air sensors or? Like, tell me more about the indoor air quality part of it.
Yeah, we started doing indoor air quality testing this last school year and radon testing.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got all of our buildings on a radon testing schedule now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also taking indoor air readings. And that's been very interesting for us.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing is because we have multiple HVAC systems in our buildings, for instance, in the elementary schools where they did all of the full day kindergarten pieces, those are cream of the crop systems that are pumping in 100% outside air throughout the day. And we've definitely have better air quality in those classrooms than we do in the other classrooms too. So when you can replace the entire HVAC system, and every school has a need for an HVAC system replacement except for Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a really interesting conversation today about Emerson with some of the vendors that are pitching to get some of these programs forward. It would be game changer in terms of the air quality, also the air control, what we could do for a temperature perspective. We could literally have one classroom that would have heat, and the next classroom would have cooling ability. Right now, the whole school is temperature. And so everyone's miserable for about this month, and then are miserable when we turn everything over when it goes from cold to hot. And unfortunately, that just doesn't work when you're trying to create a really great learning environment, especially for some of our students who are really sensitive. So it would be kind of a two-way street of just way better energy efficient systems, and the air quality would be significantly better in our schools.
Okay, so I used to work I manage the indoor air quality people at EPA.
Probably know more than I do.
I did
Yeah.
walkthroughs of schools to tell them what to do about
Yeah.
indoor air quality. So I didn't know if you were just doing better filtration, which is awesome, or if you were going to add like monitors that would be on.
Monitors would not be part of the plan, but it is something that we've discussed. It's a hot topic right now in schools.
There's like introduced legislation in the
Yep.
state.
Yeah. So, and there's all these vendors that are all of a sudden kind of cropping up and saying, we want your business. And we're like, can we replace the HVAC systems first?
Sure. And some of those
So-
vendors it's a little bit of what's the word? It's a little Wild West out
Okay.
there. Yeah. Okay.
I'll call you when we're at that point.
I'll call my old coworkers. All right. Thanks.
Anything else?
We're done? All right. Well, good luck to you.
Thank you. And if I could just add, I am 14 months into this job and learning a lot still day to day, but our relationship with the Park District is really critical. And we've done everything we can, especially with John coming on board. I feel like I see him every week. We happen to actually live like very close to each other. We like the same movies. We like the same TV shows. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, my God.
No, but we just have a really great relationship. And our administrative team sat down with the Park District administrative team recently, and that's something that we're looking to continue to grow. And that's really great to see that because it doesn't exist in a lot of other communities. So I think the sky's the limit on what we can do together for all of our aims. And the crew here is just top notch. So thank you for all the work with the school district. We really appreciate it.
Well, it wasn't always that way when we were on the board. It was not always that way. So thank you for making
sure.
it a two-way,
Oh, my pleasure.
two-way relationship because we need each other.
Yep.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck. Good luck. All right. We move on to executive director report.
Well, while we'll have Dr. Collins here, one of the things, as he did echo, we do see each other almost every week. It's kind of funny, but we've been having a really good working relationship talking about our programs. I know one of the questions that came up, how the referendum may impact our programs. Ready to have it on the agenda to talk if it does pass. I'll give him one day to celebrate, but the next day I'm giving him a call and we'll talk through it. But the one thing we've been talking through most recently is Beyond the Bell intergovernmental agreement. It expired for the school year, but we're still working through it. We were talking about some locations, various things, but we will be bringing back the intergovernmental agreement at the next board meeting for approval. That same night is the school district's board meeting as well, so they'll bring it for approval at that night as well. So just wanted to get on the radar. Then 2 weeks from today, we will have the Beyond the Bell intergovernmental agreement for this school year.
Standard.
Yes, pretty standard.
All right. As we move on to finance.
All right, Superintendent Larson, tell us what you got.
Sure. Once upon a time, it was budget season. And we're going to start by talking about the tax levy. So this will be our very first step in reviewing and discussing our budget. I have a memo in the board packet, and before we get to that, I just want to kind of go through some talking points and talk a little bit about how we have worked on the tax levy so far. So when we started thinking of the tax levy, John and I decided to use 3 different estimation tools. And we did that, I wanted to do that because last year I just used the tool that we had and had been using for years. John brought something that was based on what he used in DeKalb. And that was put together by Lauterbach and Amen, our auditors. So we also use that tool. And then PMA also does a tool that they share with their clients. And I just kind of wanted to see how each one worked, if there were big differences, what I could learn from each tool, and also make sure that they were all in line with each other, that we weren't missing something. And thankfully, they were all in line with each other. Any differences were very immaterial. So as John and I were going through this, we decided to start working with the Lauterbach and Amen tool, which is the tool that I included in the packet. We liked it. It was very clear. It was kind of easy to see what was happening in the step-by-step process. So once we got that settled, we started talking about our assumptions for the tax levy. And I'll try to be clear in my communication. This is the tax year 2024 for the budget year 2025. So if I say something confusing, just stop me. Don't, because I'm all over the map, backwards, forwards, years ago, years in the future. So, but I will try to be clear about that. So the PTEL, which is the Property Tax Extension Law, says that we have a limit of we have to limit our tax levy increase to the lesser of 5% or CPI. CPI is set by the state, and this year it's 3.4%. Last year it was 6.5, I think. So, and it varies year by year. John and I were just looking at some historical data, and it used to be, it can be 1% or less than 1%. We've got 3.4% to work with this year. We recommend taking the 3.4, the full 3.4% levy amount increase. And the reason we recommend this is, for a couple of things as we have started working on our budget. One, we still are dealing with inflation and rising costs for supplies, any programs that we're doing, anything we're spending really. We have capital projects for 2025. And although we are able to take advantage and have a bond offering, our ability to issue bonds is limited by DSEP, as we talked about the last meeting. So we don't have unlimited funds that we can take. So this will, since we're taking full advantage of DSEP, we also thought it made sense to take full advantage of our opportunity to levy taxes. In addition to the capital projects, Oakton will not have a full year of revenue, so we're still down a facility for a good portion of the year. And then finally, if the tax levy is based on what you levy, have requested, and has been granted to you by the county from the year before. So if we take less this year, it means it's not like we can make it up the following year, if that makes sense. We can't go to the county and say, oh, we should have taken more the prior year. Can you give us that back? That's not how it works. It's kind of all built on what we've requested and what they extend to us. So we have to think carefully. It's not just a decision that affects this year. It's a decision that affects future years. What we did is we were building the estimate. As I said, we started with a 3.4% levy amount. And then what we can do is estimate new property. So I looked at a 5-year average, a 10-year average for new property in our community, and those averages in non-assessment years. Because when we have an assessment year, our EVA will go up because we're being assessed, and usually property values go up. So based on that, I estimated about $11 million. I also looked at the building permits for the city year to date and kind of compared those with the prior year. Is it similar? I also reached out to the finance director at the city and said, here's what I'm thinking. Is there anything that you're seeing or feeling that's, would change that drastically? And he said, no, it's been a pretty stable year, very similar to the prior year. So I feel comfortable with that estimate, and the estimated change in EAV is 1.5%. Now, I mentioned the assessment. So Cook County assesses communities in chunks every 3 years. So our next assessment is going to be in 2025. So right now, we will not have, we will not see a large,
I thought we just went through that.
it was 2022 tax, this is where the tax year, right? It was 2022 tax year. We saw the increase in 2023 as a homeowner, right? So put on our homeowner hat.
Last year.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So that's why in the tax year 2025, we will be assessed, and then homeowner had again, we'll see it in 2026. I wanted to just real quick mention on the spreadsheet that shows the levy amounts, I wanted to draw your attention to recreation. So our 2023 levy request in recreation was 1.6, almost $1.68 million. And you can see the county reduced it to about 925,000. So what happens in that situation, we kind of want to over request, right? If we over request, it's such an art because we want to make sure that we're providing an accurate budget, but we want to over request a little bit because we don't exactly know what the new property estimate is going to be. So, and that we won't know until about halfway through the following year. So what we direct the county to do is if we've overestimated, we have it taken out of only the recreation fund. And the idea behind that is recreation has other revenue sources with program fees and rentals. So that we direct the county to do that. And this last year, for the 2023 tax year, we overestimated. Now, I'm not bothered by that because it means that we're getting everything we requested. If we underestimate, we leave money on the table. So let's say I did an estimation, if we're using the 2024 tax year, and we only estimate $1 million for new property, then that, it's not like the county is going to say, oh, you didn't estimate enough. Here, we're going to give you what it should have been. So we don't want to leave that money on the table. So it's, we do the best we can to provide an accurate estimate because as best as we can do, we want to get the right numbers in the budget. But it's never going to be exact. I also wanted to mention debt service. So debt service, as you'll see, is kind of below. Debt service is not something that is really set by us. When we issue bonds, we provide the documentation to the county, and they will just levy that amount for us based on our amortization schedule. So we don't really request that. Regarding the budget, and I know this is very early and you haven't seen anything with the budget yet, but although the bottom line of what we're requesting is not changed, so the total is not going to change, we may do some tweaking between the funds depending on the fund balances. So for example, if the audit fund was a little low, we may take some from recreation and move it over there. I can't say yet what's going to happen because we're still all going through numbers. Things are still pretty fluid. That may happen, but it will not change the bottom line. It's just how it's allocated. So by the time we do our budget presentation, that bottom line would be the same, but you may see things in slightly different places than what I presented to you right now, and we will definitely highlight that. The last thing I wanted to mention before any questions you have is the cost to the taxpayer. So and again, this is the value of the house, not what you can sell your home for. $600,000 assessed value home, the cost would be about $45.80. For a $400,000 assessed value home, the increase would be about $30.53.
Is that annual or monthly?
That's annual.
Thank you.
You're welcome. that's kind of all I wanted to go through with you. Obviously, any questions you have, any thoughts, any comments?
Real quick before questions, included in the board packet also was a summary of the information that we're able to get from other local park districts. When you see 4.99, because as Karen said, PTEL, it's a lesser CPI or 5%. A lot of park districts, what they'll do is they'll put 4.99 in there and have the county basically come back and figure it out for you. So like their budget, like the example, like for recreation, they might have budgeted $1 million for taxes and it comes in only at 700. So they're $300,000 shy of their budget every year. So every time when they give budget reports, they tell the board, as you remember, our tax rates are different. So when you see 4.99, basically they're taking the CPI, but they're just not taking the steps right to calculate all the way through, like Karen did with the different tools or the 3 tools that we assessed it with. So that's when you see 4.99 is because of the fact it's an easier method to file paperwork with the county.
And Tinley Park really has 0? Really? Wow.
I mean, it depends on, what else you have in your community.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. Well, I've always said that you have to keep up with inflation. You have to keep up with the changes in salaries. Salaries are going up higher with minimum wage, and since the Great Resignation, we've bumped up salaries. So I think it's very important for us to take this increase, because otherwise we get behind, like what happened with the school district. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I guess my 2 cents is, first of all, I really appreciate the comprehensive job you did on researching it and going beyond just one tool. And I also really appreciate the comprehensive job you did of explaining it to us in ways that even those of us without a finance background could get our arms around. But yeah, I mean, this definitely seems like both a reasonable and necessary amount to keep offering the best we can to our customers of the park and community members in the park district.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Thanks for the explanation. Always great to hear it once again. And I do think that it's important that we stay in line with inflation, just the general costs of everything going up year to year. Be nice to say we don't have to adjust like that, but we're still having to pay the exact same costs as everybody else. So it doesn't make sense for us to contract our budget by having to not adjust with those increased costs. So, it seems very reasonable to me.
Oh, thank you.
I think just consensus as to whether.
Yeah, and we will continue to discuss this. I mean, we do have further meetings about, the budget. So don't worry. This isn't if something, first of all, as always, if you have questions later on when you go home or you wake up at 4 a.m. and say, I just need to know this about property taxes, don't hesitate to email us. But also we will, be talking about this, continue to talk about this.
So the 3.4, add the new growth, what do we get?
It's about 3.95.
Oh, okay.
So that's what you're using to form your budget. So I think it would be helpful if you knew if that's what you could count on.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, and certainly if you have other questions, but, it doesn't get finalized. We don't establish the resolution for the estimated property tax until November 7th. We're just starting the discussion a little early.
Correct. The reason for starting this discussion early is as we're planning the budget and we have the budget presentation coming up in about 3 weeks, we're going to have this number in the budget and just want to make sure the board is comfortable with this number, because right after the budget presentation, November 7th, is a resolution for the tax levy estimation. So we're looking to have consensus a day, knowing that our budget presentation is coming up and then documentation to be filed is coming quickly afterwards. So if there's any concerns or issues with going with the CPI plus new growth to get an estimated calculation of 3.95%, we would just like to hear it now so we can adjust our planning accordingly.
I just have a question that I think I had in my brain when I read the packet, and I just want to make sure I had it right. So even though we're increasing the levy by a percentage, the total amount of the levy is going from 10,000,006 to 10,000,000. Like the overall absolute amount of the levy is going down because of the interest.
Yeah,
from
so,
the I just want to make sure.
yeah,
have this
no,
right
and
in
I
my
should have
brain.
mentioned that. I'm sorry, because it is confusing. So what happens, so the bonds and the principal and interest payments are kind of separate. And it just so happens that this year, that's less than the prior year. So the prior year, we were paying about 4 million, and then this year we're only going to be paying about 3 million. And again, that's set by our amortization schedule. So it's not like we can gather more. We can't get more from the taxpayers than what's already been agreed upon with the taxpayers in the county. So yes, so that's it.
We're
It's
paying less
unusual
interest on the on the borrowed money
for this year. Mm-hmm.
If you remember the last board meeting when Andrew from PMA was here, they had the different schedules of what we were paying each year. There were some that came offline or some that was paused and then coming back to help pay with the referendum. So it's a schedule that PMA said that we agreed to. So since it was less for this tax year, that's why it's less overall in the tax levy.
Can you show me where that number is? I missed that.
Oh, sure. It's right on the spreadsheet. So it's the bottom part.
Oh,
I'm looking at the.
830,000 lower. Yeah. Follow across.
I'm
Yep.
looking at this one, the estimate for 2024.
Yep.
Yep.
This guy,
Mhm.
and it was again 10,678, and now 10,052.
Yes. And that's because of the bond.
Yeah.
So all the other funds will have an increase, but the bond doesn't because it just is matching our amortization schedule. I've never said amortization so many times.
So that amount is fixed. We don't vote on that. That just happens.
Correct. Right. So, yep. So when we do the resolutions regarding the tax levy, that's not even included.
I had a question. The 3.95 is what the actual number?
With a new property.
With the new property.
Mhm.
Do you have an estimate of how much actual tax dollars that will bring to the Park District for next year?
That's what we're putting in the budget.
But do you have a number, like an actual estimate, like 100,000, 200,000?
You mean
From new EAV, how much
Oh,
more money is coming into the bucket?
Yeah, I could
from-
calculate that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have it on hand
Okay,
right
alright,
now, but
then
yes.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Translate.
So-
Thank you.
Translate Latin means.
My one question is that we're kind of consensus tonight for a number that will generate additional tax revenue, something you can
Mhm.
figure out later, that would be going into a budget that we haven't seen yet. And I'm assuming that money's probably already allocated or an idea of allocation for that. So I like that we're having the discussion early. I really do. It's just it's probably just the way I'm thinking is that I would have seen the budget first, and we discussed the budget because the budget is a wish list of what the staff wants to do for the next year. But we're already agreeing to how much more additional money we're going to be taxing before we see what we're actually spending it on. And I guess it's like the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Maybe it's chicken before the egg or something.
Yeah, it is. I totally understand how you're feeling. I think part of what we were thinking is it's nice to have this separate so we can actually have a more impactful and in-depth conversation about just the levy. So you had a chance to ask these questions and understand it a little bit, which is why we pulled it out just a little bit. But yeah, you're exactly right. We're sort of getting your feel on if you're okay if we proceed in this way, but you haven't seen
What
anything
it's
else.
actually going
Correct.
to. Yeah.
So I think an important number here is the total levy less debt service is anticipated to increase by 3.95% or 255,000 or almost 256. So
Correct.
what we're voting on is giving us 256K more,
We're not even.
but we
voting
don't know how much.
No, we're not voting.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, remember, this is an estimate, because our estimate of new growth is $11 million. So that estimate could go down.
Yeah,
So it won't go lower than the CPI at 3.4.
sure.
But with the new growth of estimate at 11 million, we're at 3.95. If all of a sudden new growth is only 8, that factors into it. So with our estimate of the 11 million, you are correct that we're looking to receive additional $255,905 for would be in the budget for next year. And also remember that if you look all the way over on the left on this sheet, different funds, some of them are restricted. The only two that are not restricted funds are corporate and recreation, meaning that if IMRF has a high fund balance, we cannot transfer money out of that account to another account. So that's why usually your corporate and your recreation has a little bit more. As Superintendent Larson was stating, when we get through the budget and kind of look at our fund balances, if one's higher than the other, we can move money around to help us out. So out of the 255, you look at corporate's 133, and recreation is an additional $36,000. So those are the actual dollars that could be allocated additionally to the budget on more material supplies or whatever projects we may have, where other ones strictly are IMRF, liability, paving, police, and et cetera.
So, and what that means is if the money's already in that fund, we can't touch it. We can only move like now, sort of what we're proposing, what we're requesting. If it's already in there, we can't move it around.
I kind of like this design where you're looking for guidance from us as to what are going to be the priorities for the budget process coming up, rather than all of a sudden at the end, like last year, oh, well, do we even think this budget is even going to be viable? Because we hadn't even given you any indication whether or not there was support. So I like knowing that going forward, we have an idea of where we're going to be at the end of the process. And we then can spend the next however many hours we've got in front of us with the budget process, knowing that we either have to whittle or we have to add or find those priorities. So I appreciate this ahead of time because I think it allows you to guide and plan better. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think staff probably appreciates it, having it, known.
I'm sure they're all tired of listening to me talk about it.
No one's tired. It's just the beginning.
Ever. I will be honest, it was interesting working when I first started working on these tools, and I realized how much I've learned in the last year. It was like incredible. I understood this in ways that I felt so at sea last year. So it's really nice to be able to know that I've learned a lot in the last year about this.
I will say from my perspective, Karen did a wonderful job putting these tools together. She asked a lot of questions if it was with Lauterbach and Amen or PMA, but she did one fine job putting all these tools together. It was really great working through this process with her.
I just have a housekeeping question, I guess you could say. Scheduling wise, when are we going to do a final vote on everything?
Well, for the tax levy, so the levy itself has a separate, lane than the other budget items. So what we'll do on November 7th is we'll have the board establish and create a resolution for an estimated property tax levy. Now that's still estimated, so it's just we need to establish it. And then on we do not, because we're under 5%, we do not need to have a truth in taxation hearing. So that's why it's listed in the schedule, but right now it's not needed. If we were going to have that, we'd have to publish this and then have a quick hearing. We had to do that last year, if you remember. And then we'll do an ordinance, have the board approve an ordinance for the final property tax levy, which will be December 5th. And then we have to file that with the county before the end of December. It's the last Tuesday in December.
Because I seem to remember we're making a vote in January. Is that true, or can I?
Well, for the budget as a whole, we hope to have an improved budget by the end of 2024. We did not extend it into January.
Okay, so we'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. Okay. 'Cause,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think last couple of years we've kind of extended it into January.
Yeah,
Final votes or something.
yeah, we wanted
what I
to
was
try and get everything finished by the end of this year.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Karen? Superintendent Larson? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go on to Buildings and Grounds, Commissioner Bo.
All right, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Wolf.
Is there no motion?
Oh.
Sorry.
All right. I move to approve Sager Sealant Corporation as the lowest responsible bidder for the Centennial Aquatic Center lap pool joint replacement project in the amount of $37,500 and to authorize the executive director to execute and deliver such agreement. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Sorry.
No problem.
I didn't even have the cheat sheet in front of me with the motions. I was like looking around like, oh, did we forget that? So, as we discussed at the last board meeting, we did put the project out to bid to complete the joint replacement for the lap pool. We did only have one bidder. However, it was the one bidder we had really hoped would put forth a bid, which was Sager Sealant. Sager Sealant was the one that had started the process and began the repair work for us that we could get completed in the spring. They were the one that came up with the process and did the work on the leisure pool last year. So they're the ones that helped us develop this kind of system to complete this and secure these pool joints. So we've worked with them successfully on many other projects in the past. We're very happy. Overall, this is coming in pretty close to right on budget. We're not really using much of the additional savings that we had from Hinckley. So that was also very good news. So nothing else, unless anybody has any questions.
For all those parents who have watched their kids pick away at that, now we're paying the price.
Yeah, well, this is taking away that picking away added option. So
Yeah, it's
they'll have
great
to
to
find
hear.
something else
It's
to do.
way too.
No, we weren't
tempting.
removing amenities.
Yeah, that was not supposed to be an amenity.
All right, roll call.
Commissioner Halting,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Aye.
Commissioner Matza,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel, Commissioner Bendy,
Yes.
Commissioner Bo,
Yes.
Commissioner Grau.
Aye.
All right, new business. Do we have any new business?
I have one bit of new business, if you'll indulge me just for a sec. Commissioner Matza let me know that Eileen O'Leary, our IT director, was super duper helpful and gave the affiliates assistance with putting ThorGuard on their Android mobile devices. So it would be safe in our parks. So I just wanted to give Eileen a shout out. She really does go above and beyond helping
It's
people.
cool to know.
Just wanted to say that.
That's great. And I think our executive director was in the recent publication. What's it called? The Real Park Ridge.
I was in
See.
yes, I was in the Real Park Ridge. There's a little Q&A about the park district in there. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's a decent article. So it was, it was really
Yes,
good
I
to read.
thought it was really well done. And then the next page is another article by Margaret. So yeah, check it out. That's that little one. So.
I have extra copies upstairs. I could sign them for you too if you need them.
Oh, I'm sure you get that one.
No, you don't?
That tiny little one, not the magazine one.
Like half the, it's like this, it's this size.
Yeah. All right. Well, she needs one.
I will grab her.
All right. Any other new business?
I actually had a question. The other night, I attended the CPR and more like first aid, stop the bleed training at the library, and I was wondering if our facilities, in addition, because I know we've been expanding the number of AEDs, if we also had stop the bleed kits at any of our facilities. Great, because
I just saw that. I was like, what is that?
well, because it's for if you have like something really bad happen, like a piece of rebar, punctures somebody, there's a shooting, there's some sort of really bad event. And so these kits come with strips that, because like otherwise you might be stuck stuffing your t-shirt into a wound to pack a wound and holding it down, but these have like strips that have embedded in them like lines of coagulant to help assist with that. And it was a really interesting training because they had like models of fake limbs that had wounds, and we got to take turns like practicing how we would compress and then stuff the wound and everything like that. But it's one of those things that you hope you never ever 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 need, but it's something that if God forbid something horrible happens, it would not be a bad idea to have it. Some of our more people heavy facilities.
Absolutely. Allison, you'll check with Jenny Myers regarding that. Thank you.
We were going to offer the commissioners the AED training, right? No, there was the new.
That was included in one of my board memo updates. It was a
Oh.
PDF on how to use the
Oh gosh.
document.
All right, I better go.
I could send it again if you.
Nope, I'm gonna go look for
Okay.
it. Sorry.
There's actually a website, stopthebleed.org, that gives you information about the kids.
I have a quick comment. I just want to thank the staff last night and tonight for the tours of the facility up there, and it's really incredible to see the progress out there, and I'm really excited for the community to get out there at some point in the future. So it's fun to see. So nice job to everybody, and thank you for. I know you guys took time out of your schedules and stuff to be there, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
We appreciate everyone coming. It was a great tour. I was talking with Terry Wolf today as well, because we got to see what was it yesterday and today. And I don't know if you remember yesterday where the training room was, that wall wasn't up. That wall is now up. So you could see where all of the different areas are. And there was so much progress just in 24 hours. So they're doing a fine job out there.
Can you put bandage in there?
It was a good tour. Any other new business? All right, I move to adjourn the meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. See you in